All right. If we want to think about foreign policy and Trump, if I say to you, what was Donald Trump's most controversial foreign policy position during his campaign? And by controversial, I mean controversial to his own base, right? Given that he's a Republican, trying to convince other Republicans to vote for him, what was Trump's most controversial position on foreign policy? Your first reaction would probably be, wait a second, Trump had foreign policy positions. After you get past that, you would say, all right, my second reaction is it's the war on Iraq, right? On foreign policy, Trump ardently, stridently said, unequivocally said, that he considered the 2003 invasion of Iraq, the Iraq war that was carried out by President George W. Bush, to have been a total and complete blunder. He slammed George W. Bush countless times over it. He said he never would have gone in. Now, the truth back then was that before and during the Iraq war, Trump did say many times that he supported it or that he would have gone in. He said it on the Howard Stern show during an interview. He said it other times. But that's not what I want to focus on right now. What I want to focus on is that Donald Trump ran on the Iraq war was a total disaster. Donald Trump has now replaced his second national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, with Iraq war architect, cheerleader, and maniac John Bolton. Okay? The big announcement came on, obviously, Twitter, where Donald Trump said, I am pleased to announce that effective April 9th, 2018, Ambassador John Bolton will be my new national security advisor. I'm very thankful for the service of General H.R. McMaster, who has done an outstanding job and will always remain my friend. There will be an official contact handover on April 9th. The he will always remain my friend thing, it sounds kind of like elementary school. I don't want to focus too much on that, but that's weird. We're talking about issues of national security, and ultimately, is the important thing whether the guy will still be your friend after you fire him? I don't think so, but that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is, if, as Trump claims, he believes that the Iraq war was an unmitigated disaster, why do you bring in one of the biggest advocates of starting that war? And the answer, more than likely, is to start a different war, one that I guess you think will go better than the Iraq war went. Again, if you believe Donald Trump on this, and who better to start wars than John Bolton? I've said before that if I was picking advisors or cabinet members, I never would have hired Rex Tillerson. I never would have hired H.R. McMaster. I never would hire Jim Mattis. But in the context of Trump's inner circle, Tillerson, McMaster, and Mattis are some of the more moderate voices that might direct Trump away from sort of erratic and unhinged military action. Two of those three voices of somewhat reason are now gone, and Bolton is coming in. So the question is, what wars might Trump want to start? What wars might John Bolton be interested in starting? And the top prospects in no particular order are Iran and North Korea. Interestingly, Bolton is also pretty unhinged on Russia. So even in the context of all the Russia stuff that we've been following, it's not even off the table that if Trump really starts to listen to Bolton, and there's every expectation that Bolton will have Trump's ear, that Bolton might start trying to push Trump on Russia. We're already seeing that today with the decision made to expel 60 Russians from the United States based on Russian involvement in that UK poisoning, or presumed, believed Russian involvement in that poisoning. That's sort of another story. We'll talk about that on a different day. But the real immediate threat is, what does Trump want to do in Iran? What does Trump want to do in North Korea? And who is left that would try to talk Trump out of it? It's not going to be Stephen Miller. Jim Mattis, I guess, might try, and he could fail if opposed by John Bolton, who Trump really seems to like the idea of having around him. And then the other angle here is generally having someone much more aggressive and less conciliatory on Trump's side in advance of the start of these talks that are believed at some point that will take place with North and South Korea, right? In a couple of months, supposedly, those are going to start. So this is, if you're looking to start wars, this is the guy that you bring in, right? You bring in John Bolton. And the other story here is that since the selection of Bolton itself is pretty insane and disturbing, there's less discussion of this. But we're 14 months in, and Trump's already on his third national security advisor, right? One who first national security advisor was indicted And we're not going to get into that in detail now. We've talked about the chaos in the White House. That's part of this as well. It's just more of that. But Bolton specifically coming in is a real signal to a particular war hawk wing of the Republican Party. And I thought that this was specifically what Trump wasn't going to do, right? All along, we were told, hey, you know what? If Hillary gets in, she'll go to war with Syria, or she'll go to war here or there. It's Killary in chief, et cetera, et cetera. And in the end, the moves that Trump is making are to push out the more moderate voices that say, hey, hold on, let's scale back a little bit on North Korea. Let's scale back a little bit on Iran. And you bring in war maniac in chief John Bolton.
During the campaign, it wasn't just that Donald Trump called the Iraq War a blunder.
Yeah.
He also claims that the Bush administration lied to get us into that war.
Sure.
Chief among the liars would have to be John Bolton.
Yeah, right. I mean, certainly, you had Condi Rice, you had Colin Powell, but Bolton, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, one of the architects, but this was one of the main guys. So bringing him is weird. And then as far as the firings and the revolving door goes, it appears as though the VA secretary is also going to be fired soon, but plenty of time to talk about that when it happens. Today's program is sponsored in part by The Breach Podcast. A podcast team started looking into the biggest hack in history and ended up right in the middle of the story. Mysterious voicemail, disappearing files. It started to get personal. And Breach is a new podcast that takes you inside the world's biggest hacks. They set out to answer the questions about the hack of a huge American company, and they found themselves investigating a Russian conspiracy. Subscribe to Breach, Breach, in your podcast app right now.